Think of the person who causes the most conflict for you. You're going to get the most benefit out of this faith hack that James has if you're thinking of the person with whom you have the most conflict. Because James is going to help us to find out how to avoid arguments with him or possibly her. Probably more likely with him. In working with people, one of the most common complaints I hear is we can't seem to get along. We love each other, but we argue so much. Fighting seems to come naturally to most people. Now, why is that? Well, we are born with a scrappy nature that prefers going for the jugular instead of giving in. It all started with the fall when sin entered into human existence, as it hasn't let up since. The chapter break, which was added long after James wrote, between James 3:18 and 4:1, it's kind of unfortunate. In chapter 3, we've been confronted by the destructive power of the tongue and the damage that the mouth can do, the words we say. James has also told us how heavenly wisdom counters bitter envy and selfish ambition. And the benefit of that healthy wisdom is given to us in the last verse of James 3, where we read, "Those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness." The focus then changes immediately to what happens with those who aren't peacemakers, where it says, what's causing the quarrels and fights among you? Any of you ever experienced quarrels and fights? Quarrels is a general word for conflict, the conflicts that take place between people. Fights is a more specific word, points to individual attacks that are always painful. When James wrote, he was writing to a group of believers who seemed to be in this constant state of quarreling that often erupted into open fighting, and it wasn't pretty. So what is the cause of arguments? James is going to tell us it's pride. We expect that our culture, with its back turned to God, and it really is, devoid of his word and spirit, that it would be characterized by fighting. People fight in business. Did you realize people fight in politics, in religion, in education, in marriage, in sports? Sue came into the office the other day. She hardly knows anything about sports, and she says, "Did you see that fight during the baseball game?" That gets us excited. It was a great fight. If you didn't see it, go find it. It's sad to acknowledge believers also fight in church. And this makes James' question even more pointed. What is causing the quarrels and conflicts among you? Indeed, where do these wars, where do these skirmishes come from? It's tempting to point the finger at Satan and say he's the cause. He could be the scapegoat. I suppose ultimately he's behind it, but it's more than that. It would also be convenient to say the problems there were blamed on heretics who were coming in and just stirring up trouble. But here's what James says. Don't they come from the evil desires at war within you? James is good at making us face reality, the reality of our own depravity. He doesn't beat around the bush here. He pinpoints conflicting evil desires as the source of our relationship conflicts. Think about this in the context of marriage. Marriage has some built-in conditions for conflict. Think about the things that you expected of your spouse before you were married. Then think about how idealistic and unrealistic those expectations were and the rude awakening on the day when you woke up to the reality of what was taking place. All marriages go through 3 stages. There is stage 1, the happy honeymoon. There is stage 2, the party's over. And then there's stage 3, let's make a deal. Some passages to get to stage 3 are stormier than others. But we all have to learn to deal with conflicting desires. What kind of desires are they? The Bible here and in other places teach there are 3 basic desires that cause conflict. They are legitimate desires unless they're out of control. God-given desires. However, when you put the desires above and before people, conflict will follow. So here are 3 desires. There is the desire to have possessions, the desire to have things. Look at verse 2. You want, but you don't have, so you scheme and kill to get it. You're jealous of what others have, but you can't get it, so you fight and wage war to take it away from them. Yet you don't have what you want because you don't ask God for it. Some people say they really want to have the New Testament church. I don't think I want this New Testament type of stuff going on in a church. God created things to be used and enjoyed. That's why they exist. They are for our benefit. We are to use things and love people. Problems come when we get the equation backwards, where we start loving things and using people, where we manipulate and control people to get what we want because those things have become more important to us. Now, few people actually commit murder in the literal sense. But Jesus taught us that we're all guilty of murder in our hearts and with our lips, with the words that we use. We've seen that in James already. Jesus made the point clear in the Sermon on the Mount. Those who fight out of frustration and envy fail to turn to God for his provision, and in trying to get it, we fail to trust God and we hurt others. The second desire is the desire to feel pleasure. Listen, it feels good to feel good. That's pretty profound, isn't it? It feels good to feel good. We like being comfortable. It's pleasurable when our senses are satisfied. It's not wrong to enjoy life. We sometimes get that in church where it feels like you can't have any fun and you can't enjoy anything. Paul instructed Timothy to help people find their hope in God, and then he described God this way in 1 Timothy 6:17, who richly provides us with everything for our enjoyment. That's a good God. When pleasure, however, becomes the number one goal of life, you are opening yourself to conflict. You can't operate for long on an if it feels good, do it methodology and not invite conflict. When I'm more interested in my comfort than I am in yours, and all I care about is what makes me feel good, trouble's just ahead. And so when the desires to have and to feel good are thwarted, conflict is going to happen. Why do you think the two biggest sources of conflict in marriage involve money and sex, and then the children who come as a result and cost a lot of money? The desires are strong, so when they are thwarted, resentment builds up. The desire to have, the desire to feel, the desire to be. So in the next few verses, what James does, he gives us several short sentences for practical, quite specific actions that we can take in order to stop arguing, the arguing that leads to fighting. And they're really pretty simple. The first action is give in to God. Just give in to God. So humble yourselves before God. Let God be God. Quit trying to run your own life. Give him control. James made the point earlier that conflict occurs with other people because of the conflict that we have within us. You're not going to get along with other people when there is a civil war that wages inside of you. So the order is pretty clear here. Find peace of mind by making peace with God, and you will be able to experience peace with others. When we don't know God's peace, here's what happens. If I'm in charge and somebody comes along and I don't get my way, I'm upset. Just picture that toddler in the grocery cart at the store. But we can all be that toddler in the grocery cart. If I don't get my way, I'm upset and I become irritable. I want things to go the way that I want them to go. We can stomp our feet. We can slam the doors. When things don't go our way, anger starts to simmer. With God in charge, it's not going to be as irritating. God gives us the means to deal with it when he says, let the peace of Christ rule in your heart. And you know that word rule is the word umpire. Let Jesus umpire in your heart and make the calls. He's not going to be like the home plate umpire. He's going to get every call right. When we have the peace of Christ ruling in our lives, we will be at peace with ourselves and with others. So learn to give in to God. That means praying, thy will be done, instead of insisting that my will be done. When you can say, Lord, whatever you want is what I want, the peace process is activated. Second action is to get wise to Satan. Keep reading in chapter 4. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. Now, realizing that Satan is opposed to God, and he's opposed to what God wants to do in his world, what God wants to do in your life, be aware that when conflict comes, God's not the cause. Satan is the ultimate source behind it. The word resist is a war word. It means we have to be prepared so that we can stand against Satan and withstand his attack. The devil wants to destroy your relationships. He wants to take you down. Peter says he is that roaring lion. He wants to take you down. It's true in your marriage. It's true of relationships with your children, interactions with other people. Satan loves conflict. He loves confusion. He wants to cause arguments. He wants to cause hurt feelings. James says you have to give in to God and give him control. And then you have to take defensive action by realizing that what the devil is up to is no good and to resist him. Paul again enlarges our comprehension. He writes to the Corinthians, anyone you forgive, I also forgive. And what I have forgiven, if there was anything to forgive, I have forgiven in the sight of Christ for your sake. Why? In order that Satan might not outwit us. For we are not unaware of his schemes. He's after us. And if he can get us divided and upset and angry with each other, that's how he operates. How does the devil operate? He plays on our pride, especially wounded pride. He tells us what we want to hear. He plants misleading thoughts. In the middle of the argument, he will introduce thoughts, you don't have to take this kind of stuff, you know. Who do they think they are anyway? You really need to just show them who's boss. Recipes for disaster. Now, what do? Do what Jesus did when he was tempted and quote Scripture. What Scripture could you quote? Do you remember Proverbs 13:10? Can anyone quote that back for me? Pride leads. Boy, it's kind of like when you do Bible verses at Awana. Proverbs, Satan's there working. Pride leads to arguments. So you may need to call a time out and tell the person you need to take time to answer some questions where you can ask, how am I being prideful? What am I not willing to admit? Why am I not willing to consider alternatives? How am I only thinking of myself and not this other person's needs, their desires, and their attitudes? You have to activate the process. Pride leads to arguments. I'm having an argument. Pride leads to arguments. Don't miss the promise given here. Resist the devil, and he will flee from you. I like the Message even better. It says, yell a loud no to the devil and watch him scamper. Boy, we need to see the devil scampering. Third action, grow closer to God. Grow closer to God. James tells us, come close to God and God will come close to you. How does that affect arguments? When you're getting closer to God, spending time with him by reading his word, by praying, you're going to get along better with other people because God's thoughts are becoming your thoughts. Your heart's being transformed. Your desires are being changed. This verse from Isaiah tells us, you will keep in perfect peace all who trust in you, all whose thoughts are fixed on you. That's what happens when you spend time with God. Really, a key faith hack today is this. The conflict in your life is in direct proportion to the time you're spending with God. Spend more time with God, conflict is going to decrease. Less time with God, you're opening the door to increased conflict with others. Move toward God, he will move toward you. Fourth action. This one may be the toughest. Be willing to ask for forgiveness. If you want to stop the arguing, you want to decrease conflict in your life and get along with people, learn to ask for forgiveness. Ask for forgiveness from God and ask for forgiveness from those you've hurt. James writes, "Wash your hands, you sinners. Purify your hearts, for your loyalty is divided between God and the world. Let there be tears for what you have done." Our hands represent our conduct. Be like Jesus in the way you act. Our hearts represent our attitudes. God calls upon us to submit to Him so He can clean up our act. Our tears demonstrate that we are sorry for our self-centeredness. We're not going to downplay what's happened. We're going to take it seriously. And if someone says that you have hurt them, then you've hurt them. Don't argue with them about whether or not you've hurt them. Be willing to ask for forgiveness. Remember that person I asked you to think about at the beginning? Do you want to start resolving any conflict you might have with them? Are you willing to go and apologize and ask for forgiveness? It may be that they are 95% in the wrong. Will you take the steps to take care of your 5%? I know we've had our differences. I haven't always been as thoughtful as I should be. You know, there are a lot of times I think more about myself and what I want than I do about you and your needs. Will you forgive me? That's incredibly humbling. Pride is not going to let you do that. Well, God gives grace to the humble. If you want to change, the only way to start is by being humble and asking for forgiveness. James says, "Let there be sorrow and deep grief. Let there be sadness instead of laughter, gloom instead of joy." That means you're going to feel remorse for your actions. You're not going to try to make a joke out of it and laugh. Oh, you know, that's just how I am. It's not going to be easy. The question is whether or not you want to receive the conflict, if you want to have that decrease and save the relationship. And so the last verse tells us this: humble yourselves before the Lord, and He will lift you up in honor. God will do that. Let's pray. Humble yourselves before the Lord. Take just 30 seconds. I hope this passage doesn't hit everyone where we're all in that shape that James describes. Hopefully there are many of us here today where we can say, "God, thank you that I learned that lesson that if I humble myself," we learned that long ago. Thank God for that if that's the case. Thank God for good relationships in your life. Ask God to help you protect against anything that might seek to get in there and to ruin that relationship. Ask Him to help you see the schemes so that you can say no to the devil and you can watch him scamper away. There may be some here today where life is in conflict. And so you're going to need to think about that person where you're in the greatest amount of conflict, and it may be time to where you have to go and you have to be the one who's going to humble yourself. And you're going to ask for forgiveness. You're going to do what God wants and not what our culture would say. That the weak get trampled on. That those who aren't willing to go for it, they're going to be taken advantage of. To take Jesus at His word. And to go and say, "I'm sorry. Will you forgive me?" And so God, our world needs a lot of that today, of people who would be willing to say, "I'm sorry, will you forgive me?" There's a lot of conflict. There's a lot of stuff that goes on that just breaks your heart. God, as your people, we thank you for your word. God, James comes at us really right in the face. And I thank you for that. Because sometimes we need to be hit upside the head with truth to be able to make sure that we're getting what you want us to get, to be able to live to please you. And so thank you, God, for these moments where we have been able to retreat into something of a sanctuary, to spend time with you. It's been good. And now thank you for the time of fellowship we can have. I see the stuff is up and ready to go. I smell the food cooking. We thank you for those ways in which we can just deepen our relationships with one another. And so we give these moments that follow, and we thank you for the food. We thank you for your provision. We love you, and we thank you most of all for how much you love us. We don't deserve it, but we sure are grateful. In the name of Jesus.